Hey guys, in today's video I want to share with you my top 5 reasons for buying a Vego Garden Raised Bed. Now I've heard a lot of people have questions about scratches and how to fill these raised beds, so I'm going to be covering that as well. I'll talk through the features of the product, and as we go through them I'm going to share some of the imperfections that I've noticed over the last 3 years and why I still recommend this product. If you're in the market for a raised bed, you don't want to miss this video. Let's get into it. Now, since this is a Vego Garden Raised Bed review video, I want to be upfront with my relationship with Vego Garden. I bought these raised beds at the very beginning of my gardening journey, and they were really what I used to start my YouTube channel. So I was sold on Vego Garden from the very beginning. And although Vego Garden did not sponsor this video, I am not paid to make this video. I do want to share with you that I am an affiliate for Vego Garden. So if you make a purchase using my link below, I do earn a small commission at no extra cost to you. The biggest reason I chose to go with a Vego Garden Raised Bed is because of the longevity. Now these are metal raised beds. The primary metal in the panel is steel, and it's coated with a special zinc, aluminum, and magnesium alloy to prevent any corrosion on the panel. Previously, Vego Garden used what's called Alu-Zinc, which you may see some other competitors still using. Alu-Zinc was an aluminum and zinc alloy, and what they did was they added magnesium to that alloy to create even more corrosion and rust prevention, especially on bare edges like the edge of the panel or if something gets scratched. So the steel substrate is coated with a zinc, aluminum, and magnesium alloy, and then it's also painted on the exterior. This paint was created by a company called AkzoNobel, which specializes in lots of different paint, like the paint on the hulls of a Navy ship, or the paint on a Boeing 787, or even the paint on a Ford vehicle. The paint they use is supposed to be extremely durable to last the full 20-year lifespan of the raised bed. Now, one of the big questions people have when shopping for these raised beds, and especially shopping for a colored option, is does the paint scratch? Now I want to show you scratches on my raised bed, and I'm going to explain where they came from. Now this raised bed doesn't have any kind of gravel or mulch around it, and so I have to mow or edge along the side of the raised bed. And sometimes I'm pretty rough with the edger or rough with the lawnmower, and yes, I do get scratches on the bottom because of that. I also get some scratches behind these magnetic solar lights. So I have 3 young kids, and they're always out here playing with a soccer ball or a softball, and then they're popping off the lights, and the lights are getting dirty, and they're smacking them back on the raised bed and even sliding it in some cases. So as you might imagine, the back side of the light gets some dirt on it, and then my kids are scratching it along the raised beds, and you'll see scratches on my raised bed in those spots. So although I'm getting scratches on the product, it really isn't even noticeable if you are standing at a normal distance from the raised bed. One of the ways that I would recommend preventing the scratches is to try to eliminate having the lawnmower and the edger right next to your raised bed. But what about rust? I hear a lot of people wondering if the raised beds will actually rust, and I want to show you where it's rusting on my raised bed and my guess as to why it's rusting right there. I've noticed that the second to the bottom bolt on these raised beds on one side of my yard is rusting. And I want to point out the difference in the watering systems of the 2 sides of my yard. The long raised bed, which has no rust on any of the bolts, uses drip irrigation. This raised bed has rust on the bottom 2 bolts, and this is where I'm using self-watering at the bottom of the raised bed. So there's actually a water reservoir inside the raised bed at the very bottom. And when that reservoir gets too full, it'll actually overflow and drain out the bottom of the raised bed, and you can see there's rust on the bolt. Now that I've noticed that the self-watering wicking cells are causing rust on my raised bed, I'm going to try to use Barkeeper's Friend and see if I can get it clean. So I'm using the Barkeeper's Friend soft cleanser. I don't want to use anything too abrasive. I'm not trying to scratch the surface. So squeeze Barkeeper's Friend on wet surface or damp sponge. Do not over apply. Rinse thoroughly within 1 minute of application, then wipe dry. I just have a damp paper towel. I'm going to start with a small amount, put it down here. Looks like it's rusting a little on the scratches as well. Actually, this is working pretty well, especially on the panel. Now rinse it. And I think it worked pretty well. Use at your own risk, but you can see it definitely helped the rust situation on my raised bed. So although I've seen some rust happen on the raised bed, and I've seen some scratches on the paint, I feel like we need to have realistic expectations about how a product is going to perform in this type of environment. I have metal against a water reservoir here. That's going to be really tough for a metal to stand up against. But if I can clean off any rust with Barkeeper's Friend, and I can prevent scratches by putting edging and mulch next to the raised bed, that's the way that I'm going to choose to treat my raised bed. Let me take a quick moment to introduce myself if you're new here. My name's Jen. I live here in Melbourne, Florida in Zone 10A for gardening. And on this channel, I'm sharing my journey with learning how to garden in hopes that I can inspire you to start a garden of your own. If this is the type of content you're interested in, hit that subscribe button and check out some of the other videos on my channel. Now, the second reason I love a Vego Garden Raised Bed is because the shape is totally customizable. When I bought my very first Vego Garden Raised Bed, it was sitting right here on the south side of this tree, kind of in the middle of my yard. And then I realized how dumb that was because I've got kids that always want to play in the backyard. And I ended up shoveling out that soil, reconfiguring it from a 3.5 foot by 6.5 foot raised bed to a 2 foot by 8 foot raised bed along the fence. And that has worked out so much better for the usability of my backyard. Now on the other side of my backyard, I also started with a 17-inch tall olive green 9-in-1 Vego Garden Raised Bed. But I bought the extension kits, which come with extra support poles in the middle and extra safety edging on the top. And I arranged this one over here to be 2.5 feet by 21 feet long. And I love this look. It really maximizes the amount of gardening I can do in that space. With one drawback, the drawback is it's really difficult to try to level your raised bed or keep it, or maybe not level, but keep it in sync with the slope of your yard. That was a big challenge when I was setting it up, and you can kind of see where I messed up a little bit and it's kind of like drooping down in the middle, and that's simply because when I set it up I dug that portion of the edge out a little bit deeper than the other parts. Now I will say that even though you can remove the soil, reconfigure it, set it back up, and fill it back up with soil, it is not fun. I did it on a hot day in Florida and it was so miserable. It took me the whole day and then I was totally wiped out. We had to order in for dinner. I didn't even have the energy to cook dinner that night. The third thing that really sold me on Vego Garden, and I still love to this day, is all of the add-ons they offer for the raised bed. I want to talk first about this in-bed worm compost bin. I actually got this as a free gift. They were running some kind of a sale where, you know, you spend X amount of dollars on a raised bed and you get a free worm composter. It's such a convenient way to compost, especially if you live in an area like me where it's just suburbia and you can't reasonably do a traditional composting method while being discreet in your neighborhood. This is a great option for somebody who has that kind of challenge like me. I also created a whole playlist about an introduction to vermicomposting and how you harvest the worm castings out of this bin and then spread them across your garden. You also may have noticed the solar lights that I have all around my raised bed. They create a really nice warm ambiance in the evenings and they work almost all night long. Sometimes I come out here before the sun has really come up and they're still on in the morning. And there's no batteries, there's no wires, they're just completely powered by solar energy. Now I know I just told you that the rust on the bottom of the raised bed was probably caused by my self-watering wicking cells in the bottom of the raised bed, but I love the fact that Vego offers a self-watering solution. Some people have major challenges with setting up a watering system for their raised bed, and you just might be willing to use that and clean it periodically with Barkeeper's Friend. Now us gardeners are no stranger to needing support for our plants. Right here is a trellis that I bought off Amazon and just kind of zip tied to my fence, and this is where I'm growing my snow peas. But I'm really interested in somehow trying to incorporate one of the Vego Garden arch trellises. They have panel trellises that you can bolt into your raised bed. The arch trellis actually bolts right on, and I love that it's just this all-in-one solution. They have the raised bed, they have the watering solution, they have the trellis supports, they even have irrigation systems now. So even if none of the add-ons right now are what you want, keep an eye out because I swear Vego Garden is coming out with new products. It seems like monthly they're launching a new product. My fourth reason to buy a Vego Garden Raised Bed is its sustainability. Now, these panels have a lifespan of 20 years, and whenever it reaches its life cycle and you're ready for a new style or a new product altogether, these panels are 100% recyclable. And on that same train of thought, if you're done with your raised bed earlier than that, instead of recycling it, you could also resell it, and these Vego Garden Raised Beds hold their value really well. I actually had bought and used some pearl white Vego Garden Raised Beds, and then I just decided I wanted to stick with olive green and only do one color in my backyard. And so I sold them on Facebook Marketplace, and they sold just like that. And I'm sure they're going to be great for the person who bought them. And finally, my fifth reason for recommending a Vego Garden Raised Bed is the fact that it's safe for organic gardening. These materials, which Vego Garden refers to as VZ 2.0, which is the steel substrate coated with a zinc, aluminum, and magnesium alloy, and then painted with a USDA-approved food-grade paint, is totally safe for organic gardening. It's been tested and proven to not leach any chemicals into your garden, even in the harsh conditions that are present when gardening. Think of all of the materials that are breaking down in this raised bed over time. When we're chopping and dropping plants in here, or when we harvest a plant right at the root zone but the roots remain in the bed, all of that stuff is getting broken down and creating gases and different alkalinity and pH levels. All of that can do a number on different types of materials. But rest assured, Vego Garden VZ 2.0 material is safe for organic gardening. Now, there's different methods of filling these raised beds. Some people prefer to do the hugelkultur method, which involves putting logs and other large yard waste at the bottom of the raised bed to decrease the amount of soil you have to put in there on top of it. It's a great way to save on soil costs initially, but just be aware that the logs will break down over time and your soil level will shrink. Even if you don't do that and you go straight for the raised bed mix and then top it with compost, it's still going to sink down over time, and you're going to need to top it at least once a year. Now, even though all of these materials are going to be breaking down right against the metal raised bed, there's no chemicals that are going to leach into the soil and create an unsafe environment for growing edible crops. Now that I've shared my 5 reasons for buying a Vego Garden Raised Bed, I hope you'll consider adding this product to your garden. And if you do, use my link below, and any commission I earn on the sale will go straight back to creating more content for you. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.